And here we go. So, welcome on behalf of DIIT. You know me, I'm Laura Ogando, Program Manager for the Office of Digital Literacy and Inclusion. I'm super stoked to be here with you today because, like I keep saying, it's Friday. We made it through like what feels like 2 weeks crammed into one, because that's just what the DOE does right before break. They don't really like to give us breaks. But I'm excited because, again, we made it and we have a fabulous session on deck for you, all about writing in plain language and writing for effective translation. And we know that is so needed in our communities. So super happy to be here with you today. I'm gonna turn it over to Lisa, who I know is about to kick us off in grand fashion. So Lisa, all you. Oh, Lisa, you got to raise the volume. We don't hear you.
Yeah.
Issues. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you now. Now you're loud and clear.
Okay.
Kick it off
I
again.
don't know. Taking out the headset, going for it. So happy Friday, everybody. We are very excited for spring break, flower power. I don't know if you can see that with my background, but yes, spring is here. Weather is getting warmer. We are so excited. And like Laura said, you might not get the whole week off, but hopefully you get something off and you get to relax a little bit. And today's session is a really fantastic one because we know in New York City, 50% of families speak a language other than English at home. So you are going to learn to create content that can be accessed by those families as well and those students. So really excited about today's session. And with that, I will hand the mic over to Christina.
Lisa, you made me jealous of those glasses. So I'm going to put on sunglasses too. So hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I'm so excited. I feel like I'm on a beach. I should have worn short sleeves or something. Welcome. So excited to do this Friday. Once again, y'all know me, Christina, especially with the office hours, and so excited for the session and so excited for spring break as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Laura.
You know, I had to throw the shades on too. You know, there's so much brightness in this room. You know, if you're here in New York, I'm looking out the window, it is like cloudy AF, but we're bringing in the sunshine. All right. So I am going to highlight our girl, Latiqua. You know, she's on the back end. She's been posting all the things you need for today. So remember, the chat is where it's at. If you haven't opened it up, you're going to want to do so. We've got all the things you need in there. And remember, if you have any questions throughout today's session, pop it into the chat. We are absolutely here to support you. As Lisa said, fabulous class on deck today. And we know that you might have questions as we go through this. So please utilize the chat. We are absolutely here to support you. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to my girl, Derry, who's got some important updates from FACE and who's going to also talk about a really great opportunity that is happening next week, specifically for the PCs. So Derry, it is all you, girl.
And I just want to say happy Friday, everyone. I am loving the vibe today. It's all about spring. We got the spring flowers. We have Christina on the beach. We have my girl Laura with her cool spring outfit. And here I am with a jacket. What am I doing? I have a blazer on, guys. Happy Friday, everyone. Super excited to be here. It's my favorite hour. And actually, it's an hour and a half. So it's my favorite hour and a half to grow, learn together, and just to, level up on our technology skills. I want to just introduce our team. I have Diana Miller in the house. So she is going to be in the house, just chatting with us. We have our girl, Chanel. We call her the face of FACE. And we are super excited for this topic today. And I want to share some amazing news. So we are now having our DC 37 members join our wonderful conference next week. So Laura was right. She jumped right into it. I love it, Laura. It's our conference next week. It's spring break, but you know what? We're gonna enjoy spring break together. So hey, I'm taking you to Vegas. A virtual trip. What happens at our spring break conference? Stay at our spring break conference. It's gonna be amazing. We're gonna have a keynote speaker. We're gonna have welcome remarks by our wonderful Deputy Chancellor. And our keynote speaker is Dr. Deborah Lamb. So if you heard If you ever been in the presence of Dr. Lamb, she is amazing. She has some empowering messages for us. And I'm just excited for that. We have about 8 workshops and they're going to be breakout sessions. So it's going to be very interactive. And lastly, again, I shared it before I just jumped right into it. DC 37 will be joining us. So if you are a new member to DC 37, DC's 37 reps will be there to share about membership, your retirement fund, all things DC 37 happening next week. Next week, March 30th at 9:30 until I want to say 12:40, and then we're gonna do a little happy hour with DC 37. All right. Last time I mentioned that it's gonna be a surprise. You know what? I'm not just gonna tell you guys. If you stay towards the end, because I know that everyone in here follows us every Fridays, so I'm gonna tell you guys. So if you missed the Friday, this is between us. Remember, what happens stays in Vegas. What happens in Vegas, stay in Vegas. I'm gonna tell you the surprise. Everyone that joins, and you have to stay at the end and fill out our survey, will receive a $5 Starbucks digital card. So we're giving everyone a $5 digital Starbucks card. That's right. So if you stay with us throughout the day, we're gonna, and happens to stay in Vegas, we will give you guys a Starbucks card. It's also really important that we want to make sure that everyone is engaged and having a great time. So in the conference, our committee, the committee that's making this happen, which is Manashi, Chanel, and Diana, we will be there just chatting with you all throughout the conference. And we also want to, we have a discussion board. We're going to have a ballot. We want you guys to post pictures, do shout outs. So if you want to shout out me, hey, you can give me a quick shout out. Shout out to Barry. I don't mind. It's all about shout outs and having a great time next week because we're on spring break together on a digital platform. We have our learning day. So shout out to everyone that made this day possible. And I just want to shout out this team right here, our digital Friday team, Christina and Laura, Lisa, Letiqua, Tali, and Jose. I want to shout out Jose too. Just everyone at DITT because they're the ones who taught us how to do digital remote facilitations and events. So we're just putting the practice into practice. So shout out to this team. Can't wait to see you guys next week. And I'm turning it over to our girl, Laura.
Thank you. I am so excited for next week, guys. And I love that, again, Derry has been really open with us. She was sharing some of the planning behind this. And it is absolutely, her team has taken a lot of what we have been showing and the fact that this event is happening, it's so amazing. I'm excited for you. So if you have the bandwidth next week, you got to join. We'll pop the registration. I know Derry's got it. If you can just put that into the chat, because I know several folks were asking for that. We'll do that in the chat. But again, if you can join, you got to join. This and if anything, just for the Starbucks, come on. Who doesn't love free coffee? All right, but keeping it moving. So I'm going to cover Tali's slides again. She apologizes, but you know how it goes. It's like, we're working remotely, but and also trying to manage our kids. She's got 2 cute little girls, but I know that she is stretched thin. However, I want to share on behalf of Tali just some of the resources from Common Sense. Remember, you can always go to commonsense.org/education. Tons of resources. Get your families in there too, because in case you don't know, and I'll just open it up. We've gone over this before, but there is a parent portal side, completely free. All right, just all they have to do is sign up, and the only reason you have to sign in and kind of just give an email is because that is how they secure funding. So it's purely funding because they are nonprofit. They get a lot of donations, and that is how they're able to make everything that they do free for all of you. So if you haven't done so already, remember, you're gonna share this with your families. There are so many wonderful things on spring break. And as per usual, you go to a site and it's like, cookies. Are you okay with cookies? Yes, I'm good. Like, can we just make that a thing now? Stop asking. I want to see your stuff. So anywho, please make sure you're sharing this with your families. And then specifically because we are going into spring break, remember, you've got the wide open schools, which Oh, hold on. Which has some specific activities for spring break. So I'm going to head there right now. 1 second here. And it's, oh, NYC schools. I always get this wrong. There we go. All right, so we went over the parent and caregiver guides last week, but if you go here into the Family Center, you've got a ton of resources. And then remember, you've got the spring break activities. Hold on here, because I saw this last night. See, this is what I mean. I'm extremely tired today, but if you search for spring break, I believe that should pull it up for you. And there's a ton of different activities. Remember, everything here is curated, which is the really nice part. You don't have to worry about like, is this safe? Is it not safe? All of it's 1000% safe, and it's good stuff. And the other thing too to keep in mind is that some of these resources, while they're online, some of them are actually, you know, some kind of offline things. So if we're looking to kind of disconnect a little bit, maybe, you know, lessen the screen time because it is spring break and we should be enjoying the spring weather, that's cool too. They've got you covered on both ends. So they've got digital resources and they've got what we call, you know, like the unplugged stuff, right? Doesn't require the internet or a device. You're just kind of, you know, going through it. So that is there for you. And remember, everything on there 1000% free. All right, free, which is always our favorite F word. Actually, it's the second favorite one because my first one is Friday. Get your minds out the gutter. All right, let's find out who is in our Zoom room. 1 second here. I'm gonna launch our poll. Hold on, because you know we like to know who is here. So on your screen, you should see this poll popping up. Let us know. We expect our PCs to be here, but you know how we do. If you happen to be someone, and I see we got three folks who are saying other, let us know what that other title is. We like to know. We're nosy. So let us know, and I'm going to give you just a few more moments in that poll. Oh, I see someone wrote a community associate. That's cool. Yeah, we love that you're here. So, you know, it doesn't matter what your title is. The fact that you're showing up, getting some quality PD, learning and growing alongside with us, that's all we care about. So I see we have a CEC administrative assistant. Awesome. Ooh, and an executive assistant to the exec superintendent for Brooklyn. Oh my goodness. All right. So I'm going to keep this poll up for just another few moments. We have about 76% of you completing it. So I'm going to give you another few moments. Let's see if we can crack 80. And I see so many of you are also in the chat. Again, welcome to everybody who's coming on in. I see we got a lot of folks in here feeling the love and the excitement because it's Friday and this is just the most amazing community. All right, I'm going to end it. Looks like we actually did get to that 80%, which is awesome. Let's share the results. So overwhelmingly, we know we got our PCs in the house. Shout out to all of you who are here learning, growing with us. And welcome to all the other folks, our FSCs, our FLCs. We got a couple teachers, a couple school administrators. So awesome, awesome. Thank you all. All right, I'm gonna stop sharing. And you know how we do, we're gonna do one more poll because we like to know how you're feeling, right? Always good to check in. I have to say, I don't wanna like, you know, skew the data, but today, even though I am tired, I am overwhelmingly happy. I'm not gonna lie, it's right before spring break. I am just feeling all the excitement. But if you're tired, that's okay too, because Lord knows it's been a week. I feel like it's literally been like 2 weeks in one, maybe 3 weeks.
I'm with you, Laura. It's definitely been a week. I'm overwhelmingly happy and don't want to skew the results either, but it seems like people so far are agreeing.
Right? And remember, it's okay to also have all the feelings, right? This week has definitely been a week of all the feelings. I've been like excited and tired and happy and shocked And at some points a little frustrated and angry. It's like, oh my God, enough. So this is definitely the week of all the feelings, but today I'm here with you guys and I'm definitely excited. And I see Ernesto in the chat. I waited all week for today. That is exactly how I feel. I have been talking about Friday since I think last Friday. Like I was already thinking about it, knowing like, oh man, this week ahead. But you made it. That's the good news. You all made it. All right. So that's what I always say. You know, here at the DOE, we just, between our teachers, our PCs, secretaries, admins, like we're just the type of folks, we get it done no matter what. You could pretty much throw the kitchen sink at us. We'll just be like, all right, I guess we're doing that too. we're a resilient group of folks. So, you know, that's why they just keep throwing stuff at us. We're just that good.
There you go.
All
And we
right.
know the feeling as family facing liaisons. We are tasked with many tasks.
Exactly. And we just keep trucking along, right? That's, you do what you got to do. All right, folks, I'm going to end this poll for us. I see that we are overwhelmingly happy, and I get the feeling it's because it's Friday and it's the day before spring break. Come on. No one's counting down till 3, right? Like that's not a thing. But yes, it is. All right, let's go. Do want to share with you what is on deck. So as you know, next week is spring break. There won't be class. I know, womp womp. But we are coming back strong after spring break. When we come back, we have the folks from Mouse who are going to do a really fabulous session all about how to use Google Classroom for families. So I'm super stoked for that session. That should be really, really cool. We know that, you know, I keep making jokes, but the truth is even some of our teachers are not completely well versed with Google Classroom. So if you know teachers are confused, you better believe families are confused. So you're going to want to show up on April 9th. They have, like I said, planned a fabulous session and kind of going to walk through just the basics for families. Just what do they need to learn so that they can support their child in how to use Google Classroom. And then the week after, we have our very own Lori Ayers. She is going to be putting on a fabulous PD all about Canva. I'm so excited because if you will remember, she had just a phenomenal little taste of it right before we went on winter break. She was showing us some really cool stuff that she does with Canva. I'm super stoked because I am not the Canva expert. I've used it just a handful of times, but I can tell Lori is a pro and she's going to make us all look super profesh with her Canva tutorial. So that is the next 2 classes on deck. When we get back from spring break, we'll start planning for our next classes and we'll do a poll to just kind of feel you guys out. But that is what is on deck. So excited. But with that, guess what? Showtime. We are ready to learn. All right. And as we have been saying, today's class is all about writing for effective translation and writing in plain language. So here's what we're doing. We're going to talk about what this looks like in your school. And in just a moment, I'm going to encourage you to open up the chat and share with us. So kind of just going to open up the floor. And then we'll talk about effective translations and what that looks like and kind of what goes into some of that work. We will then talk about writing in plain language and what that looks like and kind of how you can make sure that you're writing in plain language, because when you do that, your content is more accessible. Well, then actually, I meant to put in here, we'll have a little practice time and then we'll open up the floor for Q&A before we wrap it up. All right, so without further ado, I'd love for you to, in the chat, if you haven't opened it up already, again, the chat's where it's at, so come on, what you waiting for? Open up the chat and feel free to kind of answer whichever questions you would like. This isn't like you have to answer all 3, but kind of what are some language needs your school community has? You know, we know that for many of our schools, there's multiple languages that, you know, your community might need. So kind of what does that look like? How are you trying to help with language access at your school? What are some things that maybe you've done already? And what makes this work tricky? What are you struggling with? So like I said, take a moment, open up the chat and feel free, again, whichever question you want to answer. If you want to answer all 3, that's cool too, but feel free to just kind of put your thoughts in the chat. Ooh, and thank you, Susan, for kicking us off. So translation during PTA meetings, and that can get tricky, absolutely. We are actually, and I will be fully transparent, we are working not only with the translation office, but we've also tapped on our folks from Microsoft, because as you know, Microsoft is leading the way when it comes to accessibility, and they are putting together a series of classes for us. You met Michaela, she did our Sway PD. She's also now going to do some of our translation PD. So we're bringing some of that work to you, and I can imagine that in about the coming weeks, we'll have some of that ready and live for you. So you can see, because some of that stuff that they have will absolutely help with your PTA meetings, which is cool. Yep, and I see someone writing, yeah, DOE needs to translate letters immediately. Yep, I get it. Teachers needing help, absolutely. I see some folks sharing different languages that they need support in, so Spanish and Russian. I see Chinese in there, yep. Yeah, I see a lot of folks talking about the different languages in their building. And this is so true. We're going to talk in just a moment why this work is so important. And that's absolutely it. Lisa touched on it a moment ago, but 50% of our families, right? They are not English language proficient. So it's definitely a challenge, but we're going to kind of demystify some of that for you. Oh, and thank you, Joan, for sharing. So they are using the translation and interpretation unit, which is awesome. Remember, you do have these folks as part of the DOE. They are supposed to help us with this work. So I'm glad that you're tapping on them. You know, we're going to talk about using some of the AI tools. So that's where your Google Translate comes in. And I see you're doing that plain language on your website. So awesome, awesome. Yep. And I see some folks sharing that they do some of the translation stuff. They're using some of the services like Google Translate, but it can get tricky. It is challenging. It's not always perfect. So we're going to talk about how we can try and make it a little bit better, because there are some tips and tricks, but there are some limitations. So we'll talk about all of that. All right. And again, I appreciate the chat is popping right now. I see a lot of you adding stuff in there about kind of what you're doing, what makes this work tricky. But also, I love how many of you are actually sharing the systems that you've put in place. And that's actually beautiful to see, because that's what we want, right? At this point, you know, we're a year into this pandemic. If you haven't been kind of addressing some of the translation stuff, you're a little behind the curve, all right? Don't want to scare you, but yes, we want to make sure that you've been doing this work. All right, so let's keep it going. Again, feel free to continue popping your thoughts into the chat, because this is helpful for us to kind of know what the struggles are and what you've already done. But let's just kind of, again, set the stage, kind of, you know, I know you guys know why this is important, but just to be super, super clear. Again, 50% of our residents speak a language other than English at home. And we also know that even though, you know, maybe they can kind of be a little conversational, it gets tricky, right? Many of our families may not be English language proficient. So they may be able to hold a quick conversation, but if you're sending out any type of communication, say, you know, via email or, you know, on your website, that's where things get really tough. And your families may be feeling like, oh, I don't really know what that says. So we want to make sure that, you know, we're understanding why this work is important. It's a must, all right? Now, in order to help us, I want to walk through some of the things you can do to write for effective translation, because there are some things that you can do. So let's just first ground ourselves in the purpose, all right? You know, when we are, you know, writing for effective translation, what we're really doing is trying to create an inclusive experience for our students and our families, right? We want to make sure that if we are putting out information, whether it's on our site, it's in the Google Classroom, it's in an email, it's in your Remind, right? Whatever, you know, method you're using to communicate, we want to make sure that we're actually communicating, right? Sometimes I think we think we're sending it out to our, you know, entire community, but we may actually be kind of limiting it, right? It may not actually reach everyone we think we are. So when we are writing for effective translation, we're really providing that more inclusive experience. Speakers of all languages are going to be able to access the content better. And it's actually, when you write for effective translation, it even helps make your content more accessible to English readers. You have to remember that, again, some folks are kind of like, they're learning, right? So it's not that they're, that they don't have any understanding, but you're going to make it easier for them as well. Now, I do want to be really mindful, because I know that a lot of us are relying on some of our AI and tools and whatnot. And, one of the things to keep in mind is that AI does have limitations. So I do want to highlight that it's not going to work for everything. And actually, the DOE has provided guidance as to kind of what can and can be translated using AI versus what you actually need to go through for them. So when in doubt, you can always contract the translation office. I know a few of you in the chat said that you were working with the translation and interpretation unit. We'll drop a link into the chat. Latiqua, it's in the notes on slide 10. If you're in this, if anyone is in this presentation, I have a link to the Info Hub where you can get all of this support. So we'll put that in the chat. But please do know that the DOE is here to support you, and there are folks from the translation office that can help with this. All right. So we'll put that link into the chat. Again, it's on slide 10. I should have back channeled you guys. I'm sorry. Again, this is what happens when it's been a long week, but we'll pop that link in there for you to access the translation information that is on the Info Hub. Remember, because it's on the Info Hub, you will need to be signed in. Now, some tips to keep in mind for writing for effective translation. All right. You want to lower the reading level. And we're actually going to talk about this in just a moment. Later, I should say actually later in the presentation, but you're going to want to lower the reading level. The sweet spot really is between a 6th and 9th grade reading level. And, just to kind of keep in mind, that's actually what the New York Times writes at. New York Times aims for about an 8th grade level. And that makes your writing easy to understand. So this is absolutely not about dumbing down our writing. I actually get really annoyed when folks say that, because that's not what we're doing. We're not dumbing things down. We're writing at that sweet spot of accessibility, okay? And that's actually what, folks in the business world, folks, I should say in the print world, not always the business world, but folks in the print world aim for that, right? That's what literally newspapers are written at. So this is not dumbing down by any means. It's really about writing in that vein of accessibility. You do want to be mindful of subjects, sentence language. So, the minute we start making things complex, that's when the readability goes down, right? So we want to actually just kind of keep in mind that subject and sentence, and we're going to talk more about that. I'm going to really point it out so that you can see, and also relative pronouns, right? And what that means. And again, I'm going to break this down because you're probably going, wait, oh my gosh, you're taking me back to English class and my brain is not there right now. So don't worry, I'm going to break all this down so that you can see why these things matter. All right, so when we talk about lowering the reading level, what we want to do is we want to use simple everyday words. You want to keep your sentences short. Sometimes we're guilty of kind of having these long run-on sentences. The minute you start using a semicolon, right, you've already kind of exceeded that level. So you want to keep your sentences short. You also want to use the active voice as opposed to the passive voice. And you also want to write out dates. And I know that might seem a little odd, but when you write out dates, the reason being is that in different countries, they don't follow the same format. So here, typically in the US, the way we write dates is, we do the month, the day, and then the year. But in a lot of other countries, it's actually the day, then the month, and then the year, right? So, it sounds silly, but, a date like 3/4/2021, in other languages might actually be, April 3rd, 2021, as opposed to March 4th, 2021. So kind of notice the difference. It can absolutely make a world of difference if you're trying to be precise with dates and now someone's translating and now they realize wait, which is it? So write out your dates, right? If you want to say March 4th, say March 4th, as opposed to 3/4, right? Because that can easily be inverted. So it's just one of those, it seems weird, but it's super, super helpful. All right, let's talk about subject writing. Because again, some of you might have come like, oh man, you're bringing me back to high school English and my brain hurts. So we want to make sure that when we are writing, that we don't use different words for the same subject, because it really can change the translation. So just look at this original sentence, right? Chet's class went to a science museum. It is in Queens, all right? So here we have it kind of replacing the science museum, all right? Now, when we do the translation to Spanish, right? What happens is that because this it isn't really defined for us, right? When we translate it back, what it really says is he is in Queens. Now you might be going, that's not a big deal, right? But it really, if we start doing it too much, it can really change the meaning. And this already kind of changes the meaning, because, you know, it's saying that Chet went to a science museum and the science museum is in Queens. Chet might not be in Queens anymore. So this is what I mean when I say, like, we have to be a whole lot clearer, because even though it seems like, oh, it's not a big deal, you know, we need to make sure that that we're clear. It should not be it should not be it. It should be he. And I do apologize for the noise. I think my husband is doing some stuff in the kitchen. So if you're hearing stuff, it is totally that. Trying to motion him to like shh, but you know, that's always a little tricky. So my apologies, folks. Again, the challenges of work from home life, all right? All right, let's keep it moving, because let's also then kind of show how this looks, right? If we've got now a longer paragraph. So look at how messy it can get. Chet's class went to a science museum. It is in Queens. That is a city with many schools. They educate many students, all right? So look at these three kind of, you know, subjects that are going to drastically change the way this is perceived, right? Instead of using it, that, and they, we have to be more precise. And this is why I say, you know, it's not about dumbing language down. Sometimes we think like, oh, it's dumbing it down, it's always making it shorter. Sometimes you actually need more words. So that is absolutely a pet peeve of mine. Don't think that this is about dumbing it down. It's actually about being more precise. And sometimes being more precise means using more words. So it should be, right, what you see on my screen. Chet's class went to a science museum. The science museum is in Queens. Queens is a city with many schools. These schools educate many students. So it's just more precise, all right? Because again, when we're using the it, that, they, and now we translate it, the subject becomes unclear. All right. And it can absolutely impact the way that folks are perceiving what you have put on, say, if it's your website or in a document or in an email, whatever the case might be. So being more precise might mean actually using a few more words. Okay. All right. So let's also, now that we've talked about subjects, let's talk about using the relative pronoun, right? So relative pronouns like who, whose, whom, which, and that, these are words that connect the noun to its description. And they actually, they are important. So this is the book everyone is talking about should actually become, this is the book that everyone is talking about. In English, you know, we perceive these two sentences to essentially mean the same thing, right? There's no difference in the meaning on our end in English. But when this gets translated, right, it will absolutely make a world of difference. And that's important to keep in mind. So, you know, we want to use those relative pronouns, use those, I call them almost like connecting words. And I know Christina is the English buff, so please feel free to jump in on here, because I am not the English buff. But I know Christina was the high school English teacher, and she absolutely can talk more about if I've completely butchered all of my English stuff.
No, you're good. You're good. It's interesting because, you know, teaching like high level academic language, like we're usually teaching, you know, you take out the that to sound, you know, more academic. But you're right. When we're thinking about for the purposes of translations, you want to add that in because it changes the way that the machine translates.
Yeah, and you bring up such a good point because that is oftentimes what we see happening on websites. We write at this really high academic level because let's face it, we're educators, right? Even though I know many of you are PCs, you're educators too. You spend time educating the families. I know when I worked at my school, my PC educated some of the kids. She'd bring them into her office during lunch and have little circles with them. So you are absolutely educators as well, and you're guilty of doing that thing where it's like we sound really academic, but we have to make sure that we're not so academic that our content gets lost in translation, literally, right? So hopefully this wasn't too Englishy for you folks, because I'm right there too. I'm like, my brain, all of a sudden we start talking pronouns and subject order, and I'm like, oh, whoa, hold on. All right, so now let's talk about writing in plain language, all right, and what that means. And a lot of this work crosses over, and that's why I told you this was like one of our 2-for-1s. We're kind of doing 2-in-1, but let's now kind of talk about some tips for writing in plain language. So first off, let's just define what it means, because I think some folks get confused about what plain language is. And I keep saying it's not about dumbing your language down. What plain language is language that is easily understood by readers the first time it is read. All right. So if you've ever kind of read someone's email, right? You've ever read, or just my favorite is go to your school site and read your school's mission, because the mission statements and vision statements are always really interesting. Read that and tell me what you think, right? Because if you have to read it maybe second time, a third time, guess what? It's not in plain language, right? If you're like going, whoa, it's a run-on sentence. It's like there's like 3 different ideas. That's also not in plain language, right? So when we talk about plain language, it's that you're reading the sentence, right? You're reading that paragraph and you understand it the first time, all right? You don't have to read it a bunch of times to like wrap your head around it. Every so often I'll read stuff, and again, I only pick on the school statements and the vision statements because they really are just so convoluted. And sometimes I read them, I'm like, what in the world are you saying? It's like you used all the education buzzwords in one paragraph, right? You talk about inclusion and diversity and scaffolded instruction. It's like literally every good thing about education, but you said a whole lot of nothing in a whole lot of something, right? So we want to make sure that we're writing in a way that can be easily perceived the first time in English. I'm not talking about, even forget the translation for a second here, just in English. Are you writing in a way that can be understood the very first time? All right. Now the purpose, again, for writing in plain language, and I always love this cartoon because I feel like this is what we do in education, right? We talk and talk and talk and we say a whole lot of nothing, right? When really, if we took out all that extra stuff, we could probably get what we want to say down to about a couple sentences, but I digress. The purpose for this is that when you write in plain language, actually going to make all your content to be easily found through online searches or the search feature on your actual website. Not only is this helpful to anyone that speaks another language, but it's also just easily understood by all readers, including those with disabilities. We forget sometimes that this is not just about that person that's not English language proficient. We have folks that have processing disabilities, or folks with speech and language disabilities, where they're not going to understand something that's super complex. So all the more reason to make sure that when we are writing, we're writing in plain language, because everyone benefits, right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to write in plain language and now my super high academic folks can't understand it. It's actually not the case, quite the opposite. Everyone's going to understand it, right? And when we write in plain language, it's going to be better translated with online tools. Now, again, the caveat is with this is that AI is not perfect. Even when you do write in plain language, it's not always perfect. There will be some mistakes here and there. And you've probably seen it if you played around with any of the AI, any of the translation tools, whether it's from Google or Microsoft. So this just ensures that it's as best as possible. But remember, you're never going to get perfect, at least not yet. Maybe, sometime in the future, AI will catch up to our brains, right? But it's not there yet. So if we want the best possible translation, we have to make sure we're writing in plain language. So let's review some kind of vocabulary and tiered words because I want to show you where the sweet spot is. Because again, I keep telling you, this is not about dumbing down. But what we oftentimes see happen, particularly in education, is that we tend to use a lot of domain specific language. And that's actually your tier 3 words. Those are your words that are very specific to a particular subject or an industry. And so we see that oftentimes in education because we use a lot of pedagogical terms, right? My favorite one, scaffolded instruction, right? And you see the word scaffold here, right? I say this all the time because it's one of those terms that is so pervasive in education, but it is actually so vague at the same time. We've taken a word like scaffolding, which comes to us from construction, right? And we've married it with the word instruction. Put those two together and then translate it into, say, Russian or Urdu, right? I mean, think about the complexities of that. First of all, anyone outside of education has no clue what the word scaffolded instruction means. Like, ask like a parent who's not an educator, who's, like, what's scaffolded instruction? They probably can't tell you what that is, right? They might have said, yeah, I've heard it. I don't know. My kid's teacher says it. I don't know. Principals talked about it. I think it's good, but they probably couldn't give you a definition. Now add to that the translation piece. This is where we get so confused. So this is why we really need to stick away from the tier 3 words. Tier 3 is not your friend, not in terms of, creating accessible language, all right? It's really going to complicate things. And this is where stuff literally gets lost in translation. The sweet spot for all of us is the tier 1 and tier 2 words. Tier 1 is general academic language, and it's language that can kind of cross the content areas. So it's the type of vocabulary that you're not just going to use in your science class, right? You're not just like talking about photosynthesis, right? Like that's clearly a science term, right? Instead, your tier 2 words can be used across content areas. So I might say, even though it sounds fancy, I might say observation. Observation is one of those words I can use across content areas. I might observe things in my science class, but I might also observe things in my English class, right? So it's words that can be used across a content area, and it's considered your general academic language, all right? So very, very important to kind of stick to the tier 1 and tier 2. And tier 1, those are your frequently used words, right? It's, almost for those of you at the elementary level, almost like your sight words, right? Like those are the words it's like you just need to know, right? They're just kind of universal. So if you stick to tier 1 and tier 2, that's going to help you out a whole lot more. If you're using a lot of tier 3 words, those domain specific words, that is where you're going to run into trouble because it's not going to lead to easy translation. That's where stuff is going to get lost and your families aren't going to understand. And some of them, I want to be really clear about this too. Some of them aren't going to tell you, right? I want to also just kind of call attention to the fact that you have a lot of families that because of cultural differences and just kind of who they are, they're not going to say, I went to the site and I couldn't understand it because it's a little embarrassing. It's a little shameful. I was actually talking with someone yesterday who was saying, he shared with me that both his parents were immigrants, not born in this country. And he goes, I spent the better part of my childhood having to interpret and translate for my family. And they would never want to admit that to my teachers. They would never want to admit that to, this person or that person. He goes, but I had to do a lot of it because the stuff that they would send home, first of all, it wasn't what it is today, right? We at least translate for some of our languages because back then they didn't really do all that. But, it really can be a source of pride for some folks to have to say, I don't get this, right? It didn't translate well. So be kind to your community. Do them a favor, use those tier 1 and tier 2 words. It's going to make a difference, even if they don't tell you, okay? All right, so let's talk active voice because passive voice, not your friend, all right? And here's why. When we use the passive voice, what it actually does is it makes your subject unclear, All right. So a couple of examples, and this is why I want to go through these things, because we probably do this a lot more than we realize we do. And I'm guilty of it too. Every once in a while, I need to kind of refresh and go, wait, what's actually happening? Let me see. So here's two examples. Lining up will occur at exits 5 and 6. All right. So seems pretty straightforward. In fact, in terms of vocabulary, I haven't used any tier 3 words, right? So just in that sense, it seems like it's pretty good on the surface. However, the problem with it is that the subject is unclear. Who is lining up, right? I don't really know the who. So instead of saying lining up will occur at exits 5 and 6, the better way to say this is that students will line up at exits 5 and 6, right? Because again, if I'm just saying lining up is going to occur, who's doing it? Is it students? Is it parents and families, right? It's really unclear what that means. Same is true with this next example. A referral should be made to the nurse. Well, who's referring to the nurse? Is this a doctor referral? Again, the subject isn't clear. So instead of saying a referral, kind of feels really vague, right? We need to know who is doing the what, right? So better way to say this using the active voice is parents and caregivers should make a referral to the nurse. Do you see how it's so much more precise? And again, I like to call this out because folks really do think like it's about dumbing down, using less words. Not really. In fact, I've technically used more words by being more specific. So remember, if we can be more specific, use the active voice, use our tier 1 and tier 2 words, we're actually going to create a better overall experience, right? And our content is going to be more easily translated. Again, it's not going to be perfect. I don't want you thinking it's perfect, but it's going to just translate that much easier. Now, I told you we were going to dive a little deeper into reading level, so let me just kind of say a few things about this. When it comes to reading level, there are a few different measures. You've got Flesch-Kincaid, Gunning-Fogg, Lexile, which we know a lot of teachers use. Then there's some of the instructional stuff. So, if you're in a TC building, they use the Fountas and Pinnell reading system, and that's kind of to level books and whatnot, but it actually, Fountas and Pinnell did use work from Flesch-Kincaid and Lexile and Gunning to kind of come up with their system. So either way, there's a ton of different kind of measures for reading level. One of the most widely used ones is Flesch-Kincaid. So just to kind of put things in perspective, if you're using a Flesch-Kincaid reading level, a raw score between 70 to 60 is actually that 8th to 9th grade reading level. The lower the raw score, the more difficult to read. Like if you get like a raw score in the 30s, that's actually a college level. So we don't want to be writing at that level. The higher we get, and I think it tops out at 100, that's when it's the easiest. So when we're writing in that like 8th to 9th grade level, we're writing so that our words can be understood by between a 13 to 15-year-old. And again, that is what newspapers do, right? And newspapers are trying to reach the masses. So, this is what we want to do. This is the good stuff, all right? So today, what I want us to do is I actually want us to practice this. And I want to show you 2 different ways that you can do this, all right? So we will drop the link into the chat, but there is, with Google, as you know, Google doesn't have any of the stuff built in, hence why they're just not as accessible. They can be, but you got to kind of work at it. And so if you're using Google and you want to assess your readability, you can use the Tray readability tool. I have this link here. One of our moderators on the back end is going to put this link into the chat for you. But let me just show you. Oh, hold on. Trying to escape out of here. All right, there we go. So this is what the icon looks like. This is the Tray readability tool. All right, I do already have it installed on my browser. And again, this is for Google Chrome, so I already have it installed. All right, and if you go into a document, so I'm actually just going into our agenda. All right, I have the extension installed. It is this little doohickey right here. And when I turn it on, oh, I'm sorry, I actually have to highlight my text. There we go. That's the caveat. So you do have to highlight it. You click on this extension, and now it gives you your reading level. All right. So, and this is really cool because it shows the different ones. So it has Gunning-Fogg and it has the Flesch-Kincaid, but you can see here, right? I'm in the clear. I'm in the good zone, right? This is plain English. It is easily understood by 13 to 15-year-olds, okay? Now, what I will tell you about this tray readability tool is that it's best in documents. I was trying to actually play around with it in a slide deck. Doesn't really pick up the words even when I highlight it. So do note that if you're trying to make like accessible slides, this may not be where you want to do it, but the hack could be like whatever you want to put on a slide, just put it in a doc, scan it with the tool, and then copy and paste, right? There's always a workaround. The other thing too, I want to show you, because I thought this was so interesting. I was like really geeking out the other day preparing for this. So here's my alt text. And remember, alt text should also be written in plain language, all right? So here's my description. I can actually highlight it the same way, and I can run my tray readability, all right? I do have plain English here. This tells me it's really cool, but I was playing around with this and I was like, he looks determined. So I wrote clip art of a determined looking, all right, man running with a briefcase in one hand and a stack of paper in the other. All right, there's my description. The only thing I've added is determined looking. Watch what happens. This just became super difficult to read. And this is why I tell you, like, you can totally geek out with this, but just those two little words, and it's technically one because it's hyphenated, but just by adding this, I made this difficult to read. All right. So keep in mind, sometimes, we think we're doing our community justice, we're giving more. Sometimes it actually works out against us. If I take that out, again, look, now I've got plain English, it tells me. So make sure that not only are you making content itself accessible, right? But things even like your alt text should also be written in plain language as well, all right? And Jolene, if you're saying it's blocked by admin, that is something that you can change. See, and this is why Google's not perfect, right? We know this about Google because a lot of their stuff is extension based. They just, they make it difficult. I will tell you right now, I am on my DOE profile. Remember, Christina showed us this, so I am logged into my DOE profile. This is an approved extension. So if for some reason it is blocked on your end, that is something that you can go to your G Suite admin and tell them, hey, can you turn off that lock for at least teachers? I get why you don't want students to ever be able to download their own extensions, but teachers should be able to, and it is a settings thing. So just kind of keep that in mind. Oh, and Christina's saying it's blocked for you too. Oh, that's so odd. And Christina, you're not on a DOE laptop either, right?
No, not. It's logged into my DOE account, but we'll look into this. We'll talk to our folks at DIIT and see why that's the case and see if we can get it unblocked.
All right, it should be, because like I said, this is approved. I downloaded it a few days ago and I had no problems. And I am, as folks can see, I am on my DOE account. I'm using the G Suite through our DOE tenant, but we'll figure this out. Again, this is why Google just not the best, right? Stuff like this should be built in, which is why, going back to our presentation, if Google ain't working for you, guess what? It's built into Microsoft. So remember, if you're struggling with Google, you're like, oh man, hey, they're not fully accessible, but guess what? Microsoft is. So let me show you in Microsoft, and I actually kind of like it better in Microsoft. Let me show you why. I'm going to pull up, we have this sample inaccessible document that we always use in our intro class. I think some of you guys have seen this. We can pop the link into our sample Microsoft doc, or if you have a document you've already created, open that up. Just open it up in Microsoft. I'm going to stop sharing and reshare my screen so that you can see my Microsoft document. So 1 second here. So this is a sample inaccessible document. Again, we use this in a lot of our trainings just to kind of show. But if you want to access the spelling and grammar checker, you go over to review, you go to spelling and grammar. And this is why I personally think Microsoft is better, because not only is it going to give you the Flesch Kincaid, which I'm at the high end, I'm at a 9.3, so I really should work on this. But look, it also tells you your passive sentences. And this is why I like it just a bit more, because the tray readability doesn't give you that. And you know what? Hold on. I just realized that you might not be able to see this because I didn't share my full screen. So 1 second here, folks. That's the caveat when you only share a window, any of your pop-ups don't actually show up. So 1 second, I'm gonna share my whole desktop, get the whole shebang. Here we go. All right. So let me do this one more time so you guys can see. Here it is. Here's my readability statistics. And like I said, this is why I really do think it's better. It gives you a little bit more on the readability, because truth is, I don't need to see the gunning fog and the this and the that. I just want to know what's the level and actually how many passive sentences, because this is high. Half of my sentences are passive. And if you remember what I told you, that means I don't have the active voice, and it can be a little unclear as to what I'm talking about, right? Passive means that the subject is unclear. So this to me is a little bit better, hence why I like Microsoft more, all right? They really are leading the way in terms of accessibility. But if you're struggling with Google, if you're like, oh man, I can't, it's not working, that extension, I can't get Tray, just use Microsoft. Remember, all of you have access to Microsoft as well. I'm on the desktop version of Microsoft, but you can always go to portal.office.com. Let me show you that way as well, in case folks are not familiar. So if you go to portal.office.com, that's going to take you to your login page. I, of course, am already logged in. All right, so I can open up a document, get a blank document going. I'm going to copy and paste some stuff here just so that you can see. All right, so, and it works just the same way. Again, I'm going to hit review. I can look at my word count, and I think it's, hold on, because I might have to turn on. There we go. I think I have to set this, and I want it to, there we go. All right, so on the online, you're going to hit editor. You do need to make sure that you've set your language if you haven't done that. And then this is where you can get some of that information about, like, you know, if I'm trying to write casually, this is actually way more robust. It's going to give you all of this information and kind of tell you what's happening with things. Again, I don't play around too much with the online version, but this will give you some more information. All right, so if you don't have the desktop app version, you can use the online version. And if you want the desktop app version, you are actually able to get that through the DOE. I believe you're allowed to download Microsoft and kind of the products that they have, like Word and PowerPoint, like the desktop app versions, through the DOE up to 5 devices. So that is all on the technology page if that's what you're looking for. All right, let me go into the chat because I haven't looked yet, and I do want to make sure folks are able to kind of try this out. And I see folks asking about Grammarly. Grammarly is it's another extension. I actually played around with Grammarly. I had it on here. I'll show you. I was playing around. I played around with Grammarly. I took it off because I didn't like it. And I was playing around with Grammatica. Also didn't like it. The best one, if you're going to use a Google extension, really is the Tray readability because of what it does for you. And it gives you that whole the kind of reading level, and it tells you if it's in plain English or not. So that's why it's preferable. What Grammarly and the other ones are going to do, it's almost like just a spell checker on steroids, but it's not really going to do much else. And I think that's the difference. So if folks are wondering why, you know, that's kind of what it does, which for those of you that aren't aware, Google does have a spelling and grammar. I believe, is it, hold on, is it under tools? Yeah. So it'll give you the spelling and grammar, but it's not really going to give you some of those statistics that you need in terms of, is it in plain language and how many passive sentences versus active. So that's like I said, kind of just the ins and outs if you're using Google or if you're using Microsoft. Like I said, Microsoft leading the way with accessibility. So unfortunately, and I know some folks are annoyed because it's like, I can't get the extension. Yeah, complain to Google. It's a Google thing. Come on. Like, I'm sorry, like Google, build this in. I need to know. It's built into Microsoft, and it's been built into Microsoft for years. Like, it's not even, that's not a new thing. Like, I remember, like, because I would do a lot of spelling and grammar check for like my papers, and I'm talking like even before college, like in high school and middle school, and you could actually see all that stuff. Because I remember thinking like, ooh, look, the Flesch Kincaid is high. I sound smart. I don't know if anyone ever had that feeling, but yeah, I would be like, oh, look, this paper is written extra smart today. um, so yeah, so like I said, Microsoft just doing it better. But if you have the ability to, remember, you try this out on your own. I feel like as PCs, you probably have a ton of documents. So I want this to be meaningful for you. You can always practice in like a sample. You can practice on our agenda, if you just want to get a feel for some of these tools. But at the same time, I want this to be meaningful. So pull up a document that you want to check. Again, if you're able to download the Tray tool, try out Tray. If you're not, open up Microsoft, all right, and try there. And I see someone asking about the steps again in the desktop version. So let me show you one more time. So in the desktop app version, and again, I'm on dark mode. If some of you are wondering why it looks so dark, I do this just to save my eyes. If you have been kind of staring at your computer screen for months and months going, oh my goodness, it could just be the brightness. You can set things to dark mode. It is a settings feature. In fact, I believe here, I'm on a Mac, as you can probably see. It is in my system preferences. And I can set, I think is it desktop? Might be in desktop, or maybe not. Maybe it's in general. Yeah, it's in general. So right now I have it on dark mode. If you set it to auto, that means that as it gets light and dark, it kind of adjusts. I don't want that. I just want to be dark. So I set my computer to dark mode. A lot of computers have this setting. And once you kind of make that setting to like your desktop and your system, then everything else kind of adjusts. So I always call that out because some folks are like, what do you got, some special version of Word? No, it's just dark mode. All right, so up here at the very top where you kind of have your menu panel, go over to review. Okay, and then you click on spelling and grammar, and that's where you get your readability statistics. All right. And this almost gives you more, again, this was really helpful when I was in school, and it's like you got told you have to write a 500-word essay, right? Which, man, looking back on how arbitrary. But this will give you your word count, characters, sentences, paragraphs. It'll give you your averages, and then it'll give you that readability. And I see questions about device, and is Mac better or an HP? Honestly, it's whatever you got. Word's going to work on pretty much I think any of the major devices. So it's a preference. As you know, like Macs tend to be a little pricier. I don't think they're that great for students. I feel like students don't need all of that. But it's either way, it is Word, and it should work relatively the same whether you are in whether you're in a Mac or you're on a PC. It shouldn't matter. All right. And Ronnie, you hit review and then literally spelling and grammar. I'll do it one more time. I'm sorry. So up here at the top, it should be all the way to your left. You hit spelling and grammar, and this comes up. It'll give it to you. This might not show up first if you have errors. So if you have, let me just, in fact, here, I will spell something wrong. All right. Oh, it auto-corrected that. All right, I'm gonna purposely like spell some things wrong. Okay, here we go. So if you have things spelled wrong, it's first gonna say, hey, I think you meant this, right? So obviously I'm gonna change that. And I can actually, 'cause it's not, all right, change. And then it'll give me my score. So that's also something to keep in mind. If you have errors, you kind of have to fix your spelling and grammar errors first. And if you've got a ton in your document, you have to do that first. And then when you're done fixing the errors, then it gives you the readability statistics. So my apologies because I didn't show that piece of it, but that's just something to keep in mind. So if you have some errors, you'll need to fix those up first, kind of go through your document, and then when you're done, then it'll give you your readability statistics. And Stacey, you say it's not coming up for you in spelling and grammar. It could just be, it might be in one of the settings. The good news with Word is that you can, I think if you hit the tell me, and I think if you type in readability statistics, it might come up. Let's see, or just readability, no. It could be a settings feature. I know one of the guys from tech, because they took this class and made it an online version for us. They said that sometimes it has to do with like the settings and what you've set up on the back end. And if you haven't set up that you want to see readability, it might not show. So let's see. Maybe it's in the help. And you can always, if you go up to the very top in Word and hit help and you type in readability, it'll kind of tell you what you can do. Again, this is why Microsoft does a better job, right? They're literally going to kind of walk you through a lot of different things. And I just typed in readability. So now it's given me a bunch of ways to kind of make this more accessible, you know, from listening to my Word documents, because you can do that in Microsoft. It'll literally read aloud for you. You can remove double line spacing because sometimes that can also impact readability. So when in doubt, always just hit the help or Google, because hello, that's what we do. All right. Oh, and thank you, Evelyn. So it says go to option and select proofing. All right, maybe that's for folks who are like, I don't know where this setting is. Try that out. Don't know why sometimes this stuff becomes ridiculously difficult, but nevertheless, you will get this information because Microsoft has it built in. So it might just be a settings feature, but you are definitely going to be able to get it. So for those of you who are like, I can't get that extension, it's okay. Use Microsoft and make sure that you've got your proofing turned on. All right. So with that, let's get back into our presentation because I do want to leave some time to go over one, if you need more support. And I do recommend if you want to kind of do a deeper dive and practice a little bit more, because today's practice, we're keeping it a little on the short end. If you want to practice more, we have our on-demand classes. I'm going to highlight this for you folks. We'll drop this link into the chat. But we have a document all about how to access our on-demand classes. Do follow this process, as you will need to use this group code to access any of our accessibility classes, but they're absolutely free. And so that's why we've written this guidance, because if you don't do it the way we've outlined it, it'll look like you have to pay. And guess what? You do not have to pay. All right. But here you go. In fact, let me go straight to Otis. So this is the course library. And here is our digital accessibility account. And see, this is what I mean. I'm not logged in right now. So look, it looks like I have to buy now. But the minute I log in, which I'm going to do for you. Oh, wait, there we go. Fat fingers added an extra character. There we go. All right. So now that I'm logged in, notice how I don't have to buy any of these. They are absolutely free. And if you're looking, like I said, to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive, definitely recommend the Writing for Effective Translation and Writing in Plain Language. And if you really want to one-up your game, translated video captioning. It's a feature that if you've got videos on your site, you really want to take advantage of, because remember, this is not just about translating content, written content into another language, but if you've got videos that have, words on them, you need to translate that as well. Very, very important. If you've got videos and it's just like kind of a montage with different images and maybe there's a song in the background, that actually doesn't require translation. If it's purely song-based, that's okay. But if you've got a video and it's, say, like the principal, sending a welcome message, or, the principal sending a message before spring break, and there's words being spoken, that absolutely does need to be translated. Again, It's not as difficult as it sounds. Some of you might be going, oh my goodness, how do I translate a video? Well, guess what? We got 2 different classes on that, video captioning and translated video captioning. It's extremely easy to do, particularly if you're using YouTube. YouTube kind of takes the guesswork out of it. So if you're in YouTube Studio, you upload your video, it kind of works its AI magic. Again, it's all based on artificial intelligence. It's going to translate it for you. You're then going to want to go in, because that's the thing. Like auto translation is never enough. You're going to need to go in, fix it up, right? It's also never going to add in punctuation. So it's always going to, if you just kind of leave it as it is and you do the auto captioning, it's just going to be a bunch of words as being spoken. So you always want to go back in, add in that punctuation, clean up any mistakes that the AI made. And once you've got the video captioning where you want it to be in English, it's super easy to add the translated captioning in. It's really a matter of like a setting and kind of checking some stuff off. So definitely check those videos out. All of this information is on the on demand. All right. So just follow the directions here. Latiqua has popped in the link into the chat. And I know some folks have to go. We are getting close to time. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for Q&A, but we're essentially done. All right. We're going to end right on time at 11:15. So for folks who have to go, no worries. We're going to post the link to the attendance, because I know some folks love to fill out our attendance. So we'll pop that in. But if you have any questions, feel free to either pop them into the chat, or if you want to come on your mic, please just raise a hand, because we are at about 150 folks here today. So I want to make sure we're not too crazy. But feel free. Like I said, we've got some moments here. Let me know anything that you need. All right. And Latiqua has popped in the attendance link. So the attendance is there. I'm going to open it up just that folks can see. And the session today is writing for effective translation Friday PD. So just make sure this is the class you select. All right. All the way down at the bottom. So you will have to scroll a little bit, but that is the class. And Evelyn, so you're asking about strong schools. So strong schools, oh man, we're trying to get away from strong schools. So I know that, before we had the official kind of G Suite tenant, a lot of folks use strong schools to access any of the G Suite products and whatnot. If you already have an Otis account and you're using strong schools with that Otis account, I'm going to ask that what you do is you create your account this way. All right. So essentially it sounds like you make a DOE account. And then if you have a situation where now you have 2, you click on Otis, they will merge your accounts. If you don't already have strong schools, please stick with your DOE. We're actually trying to move away from strong schools. Clay at one point spoke to me about it. He's like, yeah, at some point that's actually going to get shut down. So for folks who are using strong schools, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that is kind of coming down the pike. Probably not right now, not immediately, but at some point it will. And Christine, do you have more insight on that? Anything from your team on maybe the strong schools?
I know, but I do know for sure that strong schools eventually is going to be merged into the schools account. I don't know when the plan is.
Yeah.
But yes, it is going to be phased out eventually. I would encourage you to use the DOE account if you can.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I'm trying to say to folks. So if you're really married to your strong schools, especially as we head into like this last part of the school year, start thinking about maybe transitioning away. Remember, Christina showed how you can start to kind of merge some stuff over, or bring some stuff over. I should say merge is the wrong word, but bring some stuff over into your official DOE account, because at some point soon,
I could do it.
we're trying to get away from it. And yeah, I seeing in the chat, you definitely don't have to use it. What I will say you do have to use is your official DOE stuff. So your official login through Office 365, which you can do by going to portal.office.com. That is the official. And then remember, using your same login for the G Suite stuff. That is what is official.
We did have a hand up before, but the hand went down.
Oh, okay. If someone else has something, let me know. And we've been putting the attendance in the chat. So for folks who need that, it is in the chat. Sometimes, the chat moves a little fast. Scroll up. Okay. So if you're not seeing it, scroll up. I know that Derry has also just posted all of the important information that you need if you are attending Wednesday's event. So please, please, please take a look at that. And you do need to register. So I'm going to just click on the registration so that you can see it. It is in Zoom. So if you're interested in coming, this is what you'd fill out, put in your pertinent information, and then you hit register. All right. But that link is in the chat.
All right, so we have Evelyn Ruiz who has her hand up. Evelyn, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I'm sorry. I just wanted to clarify with the account for Google. Do we have to is it tied in? I'm sorry. Is it tied into my Google account, Strong Schools? Because I thought that was the only way I can access that. I sound confused because I am, but I thought that was the only way I could access the
Google stuff.
Yeah, the Google stuff.
It used to be, but not anymore. So basically in March, the DOE activated Google capabilities for all NYC DOE accounts. So that means you're at schools, the nyc.gov account actually has Google access as well. And Strong Schools used to be the solution. It was, but now all DOE accounts, so you're at NYC, your DOE accounts have Google access. So if you actually log on and go to drive.google.com, you have access to that. You still have Outlook, so you do not have Gmail on your DOE accounts. You have access to everything that's Google Drive, though, not Gmail.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
So what you can do
No problem.
is share all of your Strong Schools Google Drive files with your DOE account, and then just start using your DOE account moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's perfect.
Thank you, Evelyn. Listen, and we totally, I just want to also put it out there. We get that this is confusing because for the longest time, we did not have that central G Suite. And that is precisely why Strong Schools was kind of created. It was a workaround. And I still, there's several colleagues that I've been working with that they're clearly still married to Strong Schools. It's like they won't give it up. But I keep kind of like hinting to them, like, guys, you gotta like make the transition, bite the bullet, do it now, because nothing's worse than what's gonna happen. And what I kind of just envision is that it'll be an email telling folks like, hey, you got a month, because we know how the DOE rolls. Everything is all of a sudden like, hey, this is happening, and you're just like, no. So if you're someone that's still on Strong Schools, just kind of start making the transition now. As Christina said, start sharing your files with your official DOE, because nothing will make you feel more under the gun than all of a sudden you get that guidance from, the DOE saying, hey, by the way, Strong Schools get shut down. And now you feel the pressure to do it, right? And they never, let's face it, they never give us enough time anyway. It's always like super last minute. All right. And Ronnie, no, listen, if you don't know about Strong Schools, you're fine. You're good to go. Keep using the regular DOE stuff that you've been doing. And this actually, since we're having the strong school discussion, this also actually goes for folks who are still on like an individual school G Suite. That too is going to, like, we've made the transition, and I think, I don't know what number we're up to, but I feel like initially we had about 600 plus schools kind of transition over, but there's still a ton of schools that continue to maintain their individual kind of G Suite. And if that's you, again, you're going to want to start using the central one. We're making a lot of changes, and it has to do with some of the security. The other thing too, and this is really the push behind it, but we want to have a system where students can kind of take their work from the beginning of their DOE career, and it travels with them. The problem when we tie, a G Suite to a specific school, think about how many schools a kid attends in their regular life throughout their career, right? So you might go to a pre-K that's separate of your elementary school. So there's pre-K, elementary, middle, and high school. So potentially 4. And then let's not forget that some of our students actually move, right? So I might start, my elementary years in one school, but we move when I'm in 3rd grade, we move across town to the west side. I was on the east side, now I'm on the west side. Now I'm at a different school. Now I'm at 5, right? Like, so think about those things. This is why the push to kind of have a centralized G Suite, it made so much sense. It also to do with the fact that why are we having all these, G Suites, we really ought to have one, we're one school system and students travel through the school system. And it's really, it makes a lot of sense. We've now seen that with devices, like schools are really worried, like, hey, but you know, what happens in 5th grade? Like this kid is gone. Yeah, but they're on a DOE iPad. Why does that iPad have to stay at the school? Travels with them to the next school. They're still a DOE student. You know, they only have to hand it in when I'm no longer a DOE student. So, you know, all right, so I see some folks asking about receiving credit. Please keep in mind, we'll post it one more time, the attendance link, but if you want credit for having attended, you must fill out our attendance sheet. So we'll put, Latika was so on it. There it is, that's the attendance. Again, let me go to it, here it is. This is the class. So folks have kind of said, hey, where is it? Because we teach a lot of stuff, as you can see. The good news is that we put everything in alphabetical order. So today, our class is in the W's, all right? Here we go. Writing for effective translation, Friday PD. This is what you are selecting. Make sure that's the class you fill out. Don't put this one. I know you want to because you see writing in plain language and effective translation. That's not the right class. All right, here it is. Do this one. And that is how you get credit, all right? All right, folks. So we are going to wrap up early, only because I know folks are already saying they have to drop off. So I just want to say thank you all so much